I told myself the danger was over. I repeated those words so many times that they almost sounded true. I said them in my head when I woke up. I whispered them when I locked the door at night. I used them to calm my breathing whenever my heart started to race for no clear reason. I had survived. That had to mean something. I no longer lived in the same city. I had left quietly, without announcing it to anyone except my closest family. I chose a place where no one knew my name, a city that felt busy enough to swallow me whole. Tall buildings. Loud streets. People who minded their business. It felt safer to be invisible. At first, everything felt strange. The air smelled different. The sounds at night were unfamiliar. Even the way people walked felt faster, sharper, like everyone was always rushing somewhere important. But I told myself that was good. New meant clean. New meant distance. New meant freedom. I created routines carefully, like building a fragile house out of glass. I woke up early. I took the same bus to work. I bought groceries from the same small store. I avoided walking late at night. I checked my surroundings without making it obvious. I memorized exits in every building I entered. Caution had become part of me. But slowly, so slowly I didn't notice when it started, I began to relax. I found a small apartment on the third floor of an old building. The walls were thin, but the neighbors were quiet. An elderly woman lived across from me. She smiled often and asked simple questions about my day. Her presence made the hallway feel less empty. I got a job that didn't ask too many personal questions. I showed up on time, did my work, and went home. My coworkers were polite, not curious. I liked that. There was comfort in being ordinary. At night, I cooked simple meals. Sometimes I watched television just for the background noise. Silence used to scare me. Now I let it sit in the room with me. I was learning how to breathe again. My family called often. At first, their voices carried worry. They asked if I was sleeping, if I was eating, if I still felt afraid. I answered honestly, but carefully. I didn't want to drag them back into my fear. I'm okay, I told them. I'm doing better. And with time, they believed me. They started talking about normal things again, birthdays, weddings, plans for the future. They laughed more. They stopped pausing before they spoke, as if afraid of breaking me. To them, my survival meant healing. Distance meant safety. I let them believe that. Some days, I believed it too. I began doing small things I had avoided before. I stayed outside a little longer in the evenings. I stopped jumping every time someone walked behind me. I allowed myself to enjoy moments instead of measuring them for danger. There were mornings when I woke up and didn't immediately feel afraid. That felt like a victory. Still, the fear never fully left. It lived quietly under my skin, like something sleeping but not gone. I noticed it in small ways. The way my body stiffened when someone stood too close. The way my stomach tightened when footsteps followed mine for too long. The way I always needed to see who was behind me before unlocking my door. But I told myself this was normal. Trauma leaves marks. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with what happened. That's what I told myself. Friends I made in the city thought I was calm, reserved, strong. They admired my independence. They said I carried myself carefully, like someone who knew her limits. They didn't know that every smile I gave had been practiced in front of a mirror. Sometimes when they invited me out, I said yes. Not often, but enough to prove to myself that fear no longer controlled me. We sat in cafes. We walked through busy streets. I laughed when something was funny. On the outside, I looked like a woman who had moved on. Inside, I was still counting. Counting steps. Counting minutes. Counting exits. At night, before sleeping, I checked the locks. Once. Then twice. I told myself I would stop doing that eventually. I never did. But the checking felt lighter now, less desperate. It was habit, not panic. I started telling myself stories about the future. Simple ones. Safe ones. I imagined staying in the city longer. Maybe finding a better job. Maybe letting myself trust people again. I told myself the past had no power here. I reminded myself that the world was big, and what happened to me was small inside it. Rare. Unlikely to repeat. I survived, I thought. It's behind me now. That sentence became my shield. But shields are heavy things. You only notice their weight when you try to put them down. There were moments, quiet moments, when something felt off. A passing look that lingered too long. A sudden feeling of being observed. But I brushed those thoughts away quickly. Fear can invent things. Trauma can play tricks. I refused to let it rule me again. I told myself I was safe. And for a while, I truly believed it. Before I came to this city, my life had already been broken once. People think running away is easy. They think you wake up one day and decide to leave everything behind. That is not how it happened for me. I didn't leave because I was weak. I left because staying would have cost me my life. Back then, I worked for a man everyone respected. He was my boss. He spoke softly, dressed well, and always talked about growth, success, and loyalty. He said the business was clean, legal, safe. He told me I was lucky to be part of something big. I believed him. Little by little, he involved me in things I didn't fully understand. Papers I was told to deliver. Calls I was asked to make. Accounts I was told not to question. Each time I hesitated, he smiled and said I was overthinking. Each time I asked questions, he reminded me how much I needed the job. The truth came slowly, and then all at once. I discovered the business was illegal. Not small illegal, dangerous illegal. The kind of work that doesn't forgive mistakes. The kind that makes people disappear. When I realized what I had been pulled into, fear took over my body. I knew too much. And worse, he knew I knew. That was when everything changed. I understood then that I wasn't just an employee. I was a risk. A loose end. And loose ends don't stay alive for long in that kind of world. I reported him. It was the hardest decision of my life. The investigation was quiet but serious. Evidence piled up. Names were exposed. The business collapsed. My boss went to prison for many years. His empire fell apart. On paper, justice was done. But justice didn't make me safe. When powerful people lose everything, they don't always forgive. And even though he was behind bars, I knew his reach didn't end there. I didn't wait to find out how far it went. I left. I didn't say goodbye to coworkers. I didn't explain myself to friends. I packed what I could carry and disappeared into a city where no one knew my story. I changed my routines. I changed my number. I changed my life. That was the past. This was supposed to be the future. In my new city, things were simple. I worked a new job that had nothing to do with offices or secrets. Honest work. Clear rules. No hidden doors. No whispered conversations. I did my tasks, got paid, and went home. And I was happy. Not the loud kind of happy. Not the kind that celebrates. The quiet kind. The kind that feels like breathing without pain. I enjoyed small things. Morning light through my window. The sound of the kettle boiling. Music playing softly while I cleaned. I lived alone. And for the first time, loneliness felt like peace. I laughed more. I slept better. I started believing that what happened before was truly over. That prison walls were enough to keep the past locked away. Then the signs started. They were small. Almost nothing. A feeling of being watched on the bus. A reflection in a glass window that made me turn around, only to see strangers. A pause in my chest that came and went without explanation. At work, I noticed someone standing across the street one evening. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Just standing. When I looked again, he was gone. I told myself not to create fear where there was none. One night, I received a call with no voice on the other end. Just silence. I hung up and laughed nervously. Wrong number, I told myself. People get wrong numbers all the time. But my body remembered fear even when my mind tried to forget. I started locking my door earlier again. Checking windows. Listening harder to sounds outside. The joy I had been feeling didn't disappear, but it thinned, like something fragile under pressure. I tried to ignore it. I reminded myself that my old boss was in prison, that his business was dead, that I had done the right thing, that I had survived. Still, something inside me whispered that danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. At first, nothing was clear enough to scare me. That was the worst part. It wasn't one big moment that made me panic. It was many small moments that felt harmless on their own, but heavy when they piled up inside my chest. I would leave work and feel normal, tired but calm. Then, halfway home, a strange feeling would settle on me, like someone had stepped into my personal space without touching me. I would slow my steps without meaning to, just to listen. Sometimes I felt eyes on my back. When I turned around, there was usually nothing, or just people going about their lives. Someone on their phone, someone waiting for a bus. Ordinary faces, ordinary movements. I told myself I was imagining it. One evening, I noticed a man standing across the street from my building. He wasn't doing anything suspicious. He didn't approach me.
He didn't speak.
He just stood there longer than people usually do. I unlocked my door, went inside, and watched from behind the curtain. He was gone. My heart beat faster than it needed to. I felt embarrassed with myself. People are allowed to stand outside, I thought. Not everything is a threat. Still, I didn't sleep well that night. Another day, another moment. I was walking through a small market when I felt someone close behind me. Not brushing against me, but near enough that I could feel their presence. I moved slightly to the side, pretending to look at something on a shelf. The footsteps stopped. I waited, counted to 5 in my head. Then I stepped forward again. The footsteps returned. My stomach tightened. I stopped suddenly and turned around. No one was there. Just space. Just noise. Just life moving on. That was when I started telling myself the same sentence over and over again. It can't be him. He's in prison. You watched him get taken away. I repeated those words like a shield. At home, I laughed it off. I cooked. I played music. I told myself that trauma has a way of replaying old fears even when danger is gone. I had read about that. People don't just forget things like that overnight. But my body didn't care about logic. My body reacted before my mind could explain. I jumped at sudden sounds. I checked my phone more often than usual. I avoided eye contact with strangers, not because they did anything, but because I didn't want to see something familiar in the wrong face. One night, I thought I heard footsteps outside my door. I froze. I held my breath and listened. The sound stopped. I waited for a long time before moving again. My heart beat so loud I was sure it could be heard through the walls. The next morning, I felt foolish, exhausted, angry at myself. "You're safe," I said out loud while brushing my teeth. "He can't touch you anymore." Still, I began changing small things. I left work at different times. I took longer routes home. I avoided places where I felt exposed. I didn't tell anyone why. I didn't want to sound unstable. Friends said I seemed quieter. I smiled and told them work was just tiring. Inside, something else was happening. Every time I relaxed, fear returned to test me. I started noticing patterns that might not even exist. A car that passed twice. A figure reflected in a window. A shadow that felt wrong for a second too long. At night, memories from the past came back, without permission. The way my old boss used to smile while lying. The calm tone he used when explaining dangerous things like they were nothing. The way he looked at me when I started asking questions. That look stayed with me. It wasn't anger.
It was ownership.
I reminded myself again that he was behind bars. That the business was gone. That nothing connected him to me anymore. But fear doesn't always follow facts. Fear listens to instinct. One evening, as I walked home, I felt it again, stronger than before. Someone was behind me. I didn't turn around this time. I walked faster. My breathing changed. I felt the pressure in my ears, the rush of blood through my head. The footsteps followed. Then suddenly, they stopped. I stood still, my hands shaking. Slowly I turned. The street was empty. That was the moment doubt stopped comforting me. I wasn't sure anymore if I was imagining things, or if something was testing how alert I still was. I locked my door that night and leaned against it, sliding down until I sat on the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened to my own breathing and realized something painful. I had survived the danger before, but my mind never truly left it. And if fear had returned this strongly, then maybe the past wasn't as far away as I wanted to believe. Maybe it wasn't finished with me yet. I didn't expect it to happen in a normal place. That is what still confuses me the most. It wasn't a dark street or an empty road. It was a public place, full of people, noise, and movement. A place where fear should not exist. I was at the market. The air smelled of fresh food and warm bread. People moved around me, talking, laughing, arguing over prices. I stood in line, holding a small basket, thinking about nothing serious at all. For the first time in days, my body felt calm. Then I felt it. That sudden pull in my chest. That quiet warning inside my head. I looked up without knowing why. That was when I saw him. He was standing near the entrance of the market, not far from where I was. He wasn't looking at food. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was just standing there, still, like he was waiting for something. For someone. At first, my mind refused to connect the dots. I told myself it was impossible. But my body reacted before logic could speak. My hands went cold. My grip on the basket loosened. My breathing changed, short and shallow. He lifted his head. Our eyes met. Time slowed down in a way I cannot fully explain. The noise of the market faded into the background. The people around us blurred. All I could see was his face. And that face looked wrong. It wasn't him. But it wasn't not him either. The shape of the head. The way his eyes sat under his brow. The stillness in his expression. Different face, but the same structure. The same presence. My heart started pounding hard, painful against my ribs. I felt dizzy, like the ground under me was moving. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Fear locked my body in place. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just watched. I broke eye contact first. My eyes dropped to the floor, then rushed around the market, like I was looking for safety in strangers' faces. I told myself I was being ridiculous.
People can look alike.
That happens. Trauma makes you see ghosts where there are none. He's in prison, I reminded myself. You made sure of that. When I looked back, he was still there. Still watching. My chest tightened so badly, I thought I might faint. I abandoned my basket where it stood and moved toward the exit, my legs shaking as if they didn't fully belong to me anymore. I didn't run. I didn't want to draw attention. But every step felt heavy, like I was walking through deep water. When I reached the door, I stopped and turned again. He was gone.
Just like that.
The space where he stood was empty, filled now by two women arguing over fruit. Life continued like nothing strange had happened. But something inside me had broken open. Outside, the air felt colder.
Sharper.
I leaned against the wall of a nearby shop, trying to steady my breathing. My hands were trembling, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop them. Was it him? Or someone who looked like him? The question replayed again, and again in my mind. I walked home slowly, scanning every face that passed me. Every man with similar height made my heart jump. Every sudden movement made me flinch. By the time I reached my door, I was exhausted, not physically but mentally. Fear had drained me. Inside my apartment, I locked the door and stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence. I whispered the truth I was afraid to face. I don't know anymore. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was memory playing tricks on me. Or maybe the past wasn't done watching me. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face again. Not my boss, but close enough to make fear return instantly. And for the first time since I started my new life, I admitted something I didn't want to believe. Even if the man from my past was in prison, the shadow he left behind might still be free. After the market, I could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. I tried. I truly did. I told myself that fear was a habit my mind hadn't learned to break yet. That trauma doesn't disappear just because life becomes quiet. That my body was remembering danger even when danger was gone. But the feeling didn't fade. It grew. The first thing I did was call my brother. If anyone could ground me, it was him. He had always been the calm one in our family, the voice of reason when emotions tried to take control. I waited until it was late evening, when I knew he would be home and free to talk. When he answered, his voice sounded normal.
Warm.
Familiar. I didn't start with fear. I started carefully. I asked about home, about family, about small things. Then, slowly, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Can you check something for me?" I said. He laughed lightly. "What kind of trouble are you in now?" I swallowed. "Do you remember my old boss?" There was a pause. Just a second longer than usual. "Yes," he said. "Of course I do." "Can you find out if he's still in prison?" I asked. Another pause. "Why?" he asked gently. "I just need to know," I said. "Please." I could hear typing in the background, papers moving, time stretching longer with every breath I took. Then he said it. "He's still there," my brother said. Same sentence. Nothing has changed. My chest loosened slightly. Just slightly. "You're sure?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "Very sure." "Why are you asking this?" I hesitated. "I thought I saw someone who looked like him," I said quietly.
He sighed.
Not impatient.
Concerned.
"You went through a lot," he said. "Your mind might still be healing." "I know," I said quickly. "That's what I thought too." "You're safe," he said. "You did the right thing. He can't touch you." I thanked him and ended the call. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at my phone. He's still in prison. Those words should have brought peace. Instead, they brought questions. If he was still behind bars, then who did I see? That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed the moment in the market. The way the man stood, the way he looked at me, the way my body reacted without permission. I tossed and turned until morning light slipped through my curtains. When I finally drifted into sleep, it was shallow and broken, filled with sudden waking and racing thoughts. From that day on, fear became my quiet companion. I started checking my locks more than once. Once was no longer enough. I would lock the door, walk away, then return to test it again. Sometimes 3 times. Sometimes more. I checked my windows before sleeping. Then checked them again. I listened for sounds that weren't there. I stopped using my usual routes. I took longer paths home, even when I was tired. I avoided crowded places where I couldn't see who was behind me, and avoided empty places where no one could help me. I stopped going to the market where I saw him. I stopped sitting near windows in cafes. I positioned mirrors in my apartment so I could see behind me without turning around. Every small habit felt reasonable at first. Protective. Smart. But slowly they began to control me. At work, I struggled to focus. I reread the same sentence again and again without understanding it. When someone called my name suddenly, my heart jumped violently in my chest. People noticed. They asked if I was okay. I smiled and said I was tired. I didn't tell anyone the truth. How do you explain fear when you don't even fully understand it yourself? How do you say, "I think someone from my past is watching me, but I'm not sure if it's real," without sounding unstable? At night, the questions grew louder. Is it really him? Or someone who looks like him? Or just a stranger my mind turned into a threat? I replayed my memories of my boss again and again, comparing them to the man in the market. The posture felt the same. The stillness felt the same. The way he watched felt familiar. But the face was different. That difference tormented me more than certainty ever could. If it was truly him, then prison had not stopped him. If it wasn't him, then my mind was betraying me. Either answer scared me. I tried to talk myself out of fear. I reminded myself of facts, of court records, of prison walls and locked doors. I told myself no one could reach me from behind bars. Still, my body refused to relax. Fear doesn't need permission to exist. It creeps in through cracks logic cannot seal. One evening, I thought I heard someone outside my apartment again. Footsteps.
Slow.
Careful. I stood frozen in the dark, holding my breath, listening. Nothing happened. But I stayed awake until morning. I began to wonder if telling someone might help. A friend, a coworker, anyone. But the words never left my mouth. What if they laughed? What if they dismissed me? What if I started believing their doubt more than my instinct? So I stayed silent. I lived inside my head, trapped between fear and reason, exhaustion and alertness. And the worst part was this. Fear made everything feel possible, even the impossible. Even the idea that a man I put behind bars might still be standing somewhere watching, waiting. By the time weeks passed, I wasn't sure anymore whether I was protecting myself or slowly disappearing inside my own caution. All I knew was this. The peace I thought I had rebuilt was slipping away. And whatever I saw that day in the market had opened a door I couldn't close. For a long time, fear lived in my head. I kept telling myself that fear can lie, that trauma can create stories where there are none, that my past was trying to crawl back into my present only because I allowed it. That belief lasted until the proof came. It happened on a quiet afternoon. I had just returned from work. I dropped my bag on the chair and sat on the edge of my bed, exhausted but relieved to be home. My phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Unknown number. My heart skipped, but I told myself it meant nothing. People get wrong messages all the time. I picked up the phone and opened the message. There was no text, just a picture. The moment I saw it, my breath left my body. It was an old photograph. Not old like blurry or damaged, old like buried. A picture from years ago. From the time I worked under my boss. From a place that was never meant to be photographed. A place I was told never existed.
A deal.
I recognized the room immediately. The table, the arrangement, the shadows, the angle. I had stood in that room once. Only once. Long enough to know it was wrong. No one else should have that image. No one. My hands began to shake so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning, my chest tight with pressure. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't imagination. This was a message. A reminder. A warning. I scrolled, hoping, praying, that there would be more explanation. A mistake. Anything. But there was nothing else. No words. Just proof. My mind raced, searching for logic, for escape, for denial. But there was nowhere left to hide. Only someone connected to him could have this. Only someone who knew my past would send this. And suddenly the man at the market made sense. The watching. The silence.
The calm.
Panic flooded me like cold water. Then something else followed. Anger. Hot. Sharp. Unexpected. How dare he? How dare he reach into my new life after everything I sacrificed? After I told the truth? After I destroyed his empire? I felt betrayed all over again. I didn't want to carry this alone anymore. I called my friend. She answered quickly, cheerful, unaware of the storm inside me. What's wrong? She asked the moment she heard my voice. I tried to explain calmly, but the words came out rushed, tangled. I told her about the man at the market, about the fear, about the message. I sent her the picture. There was silence on the line. Then she sighed softly. I understand why you're scared, she said gently. But think about it. Your boss is still in prison. Your brother confirmed it. I know, I said. But this is real. This picture. It could be someone else, she said. Someone trying to scare you. Trauma can make everything feel connected. Her words were meant to calm me. Instead, they made me feel alone. You don't believe me, I said quietly. I believe you're scared, she replied.
But I don't think he's involved.
You've been through a lot. Your mind is trying to protect you. I thanked her and ended the call. I sat in silence again, phone in my hand, staring at that image. I didn't need anyone else to believe me anymore. I knew. The fear that once felt distant now sat right beside me. And this time, it wasn't whispering. It was reminding me that the past doesn't always stay buried. Sometimes, it reaches back out to claim what it thinks it still owns. I stopped pretending it was accidental. Before, I told myself the sightings were random. A face in a crowd. a shadow that looked familiar, a fear that borrowed shapes from my past. But after the message, the picture that should not exist, I understood something important. This wasn't fear chasing me. I was being hunted, and the hunter wanted me to know. The first time it became obvious was on a Monday morning. I left my apartment earlier than usual. I changed my routine carefully, the way a careful person does when they believe caution can still save them. Different street, different bus stop,
Different time.
I told myself that unpredictability meant safety. As I walked, I felt it again. That pressure. Not fear exactly, awareness. The kind that makes your skin tighten, like your body knows something your mind is still trying to deny. I slowed. Across the street, near a newspaper stand, someone stood still.
Too still.
He wasn't pretending to look busy. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't waiting for anyone. He was just standing there, facing my direction. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. That was the difference. Before, whoever he was, he had blended into the world. He passed as ordinary. But this time he held my gaze.
Calm.
Curious. Almost amused. The resemblance hit me again. Harder this time. The posture. The confidence. The way he occupied space like he owned it. Not my boss, but close enough to hurt. I crossed the street quickly. My heart was loud in my ears. When I looked back, he was walking too. Not following directly. Mirroring. Matching my pace from a distance that felt intentional. I ducked into a small grocery store. I didn't need anything, but I pretended I did. I walked through the aisle slowly, breathing carefully, forcing myself not to run. When I glanced at the glass door, I saw him pass by outside. He didn't come in. He didn't need to. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid he would break in, but because I knew he didn't want to. If he wanted to hurt me physically, he would have done it already. This was different. This was control. Over the next few days, the sightings continued. At the bus stop, across the street from my workplace. Once, reflected in a shop window behind me. Always close. Always careful. Always just enough to make me question myself. He never spoke. Never touched me. Never crossed a line that would make it easy to scream for help. But the message was clear. I'm here. And worse, I'm enjoying this. I started to understand the rules of his game. He wanted me alert, exhausted, watching everything, trusting nothing. He wanted my life to shrink.
And it did.
I stopped listening to music when I walked. I needed my ears free. I avoided crowds because they made it easier for him to hide, and empty streets because they made it easier for him to stand out. I checked reflections constantly. Windows.
Cars.
Phone screens. Every face became suspicious. Every stranger a threat. At work, my focus slipped. I reread emails 3 times. I forgot meetings. My hands shook when someone called my name unexpectedly. People noticed. You seem tense, a coworker said once. Everything okay? I smiled and nodded. Lying had become a skill I hated but needed. One evening, as I walked home, I felt him before I saw him. That same awareness. I turned a corner, and there he was, leaning against a fence, pretending to scroll through his phone. This time he smiled. Not wide, not friendly, just enough to let me see it was intentional. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. He looked up slowly, like he had all the time in the world. And for the first time he spoke. Still running, he asked.
His voice was calm.
Familiar in tone, even if the words weren't ones I recognized. My heart pounded, so hard I thought I might faint. Do I know you? I asked, forcing the words out. He tilted his head slightly. You know of me, he said. That's enough. I stepped back. Stay away from me, I said. He laughed softly, not because something was funny, but because my fear amused him. You reported the wrong man, he said. And the right people noticed. That was when the last piece fell into place. He wasn't my boss. He was worse. Connected.
Involved.
One of the shadows behind the business I exposed. The kind of man who doesn't need to rush. The kind of man who likes watching consequences unfold slowly. I'm calling the police, I said. He shrugged.
For what? He asked.
I'm standing on a public street, talking. He stepped closer. I stepped back again. Relax, he said. If I wanted you gone, you wouldn't be standing here. That sentence broke something inside me. Because he was right. This wasn't about killing me. This was about reminding me that my past decisions still had a price. That night, I understood the power shift clearly. I wasn't the one watching anymore. I was the one being watched. And he wanted me to know that every step I took, every choice I made, every attempt to rebuild.
He was part of it now.
The hunt wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was patient. And that made it terrifying. Because hunters who enjoy the chase never end it quickly. I didn't plan to confront him. That is the truth I keep repeating to myself. Even now, I didn't wake up that day thinking, today, I will face the shadow that has followed me across cities. I didn't prepare a speech or imagine bravery. I only wanted one thing, to breathe without feeling watched. But fear has a way of pushing you into places you never intended to go. It happened late in the afternoon. I had stayed longer at work, hoping the daylight would protect me. I told myself darkness made things worse, that shadows grew teeth at night. When I finally left, the sky was already fading into that dull gray that makes everything feel uncertain. I took a different route home again. A narrow street I rarely used, lined with abandoned buildings and overgrown fences. I knew it wasn't smart, but I also knew crowded places hadn't saved me either. Halfway down the road, the air felt wrong. Too quiet. No traffic. No voices. Not even the sound of wind moving leaves. I slowed. My steps echoed louder than they should have. That was when I heard his voice. You always choose the quiet roads, he said. I stopped breathing. He stepped out from behind an old concrete wall, as if he had been waiting there the whole time. This place was empty. No shops. No houses with lights on. No witnesses. My heart dropped into my stomach. You knew I'd come this way, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to sound calm. He smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, confidently. I know more about you than you think, he replied. He walked closer, slow and relaxed, hands visible, as if he wanted me to understand that he didn't need to rush. Stay back, I warned. Or what? He asked softly. I hated how familiar his words sounded. The tone. The rhythm. It reminded me of my former boss, how he spoke during meetings, how he made threats sound like advice. You're just like him, I said before I could stop myself. His eyes lit up. That's not an accident, he said. People like us learn from each other. My stomach twisted. What do you want from me? I demanded. I already told the truth. I did what was right. He laughed quietly. You think this is about right and wrong? He asked. This is about consequences. He stopped a few steps away from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Your boss took the fall, he continued. He was careless. He thought paperwork and lies were enough to protect him. But the business didn't end with him. I felt anger rise, burning through the fear. So, you came to scare me? I asked. To punish me? No, he said. I came to remind you. Of what? That silence is safer. The words landed heavy. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. You destroyed more than one life when you talked, he said. Some of us lost money. Power. Years of work. I almost lost my life. I shot back. He shrugged. And yet, you're still here. That was when rage finally mixed with fear. You think I regret it? I said. I don't. I'd do it again. For a brief moment, something dark flashed across his face. Then he smiled again. That's why I'm here, he said. To see how brave you still are when you're alone. My heart raced. What are you going to do? I asked. He stepped aside slightly, blocking the path behind me. I won't touch you, he said calmly. Not today. Relief tried to rise, but I crushed it. Then why follow me? I asked. Because fear does more damage than violence, he replied. And because watching you live with it is satisfying. My hands clenched into fists. You're sick, I said. Maybe, he replied. Or maybe I'm practical. He straightened and looked around the empty street. No cameras, he said casually. No witnesses. Just you and me. My pulse thundered. If you go to the police again, he continued, they won't find anything new. And next time, someone else might not be as patient as I am. That was the threat.
Clear. Cold.
Final. I didn't answer. I didn't scream. I ran. I turned and sprinted down the street, my legs burning, my breath tearing out of my chest. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel his presence fading, not because he chased me, but because he didn't need to. That terrified me more than footsteps would have. I ran until my lungs hurt and my vision blurred. When I finally stopped, I was shaking so badly I had to lean against a wall to stay upright. I waited. No footsteps. No voice. No shadow. He let me go. I told myself that meant I escaped, but deep down I knew better. I hurried home, every sound making me jump. Every passing car felt like it slowed for me. Every stranger looked dangerous. Halfway home, I pulled out my phone and called my friend. My voice broke as soon as she answered. He found me, I said. I saw him again. He talked to me. She tried to calm me, asking questions, telling me to breathe, telling me she was listening. I called another friend, then another. I needed people to know. I needed witnesses, even if they weren't there. By the time I reached my street, my hands were numb from gripping my phone. The houses looked normal. Too normal.
Lights on.
Curtains drawn. Quiet domestic peace. I slowed as I approached my building. That was when the strange feeling hit me. Not fear. Something worse. A heaviness. Like the air itself had changed. My chest tightened. I stopped outside my house, staring at the door. Something was wrong. I didn't know what. I only knew my instincts were screaming. I called my friend again, my voice barely steady. Something doesn't feel right, I said. Please tell the others. Tell them to come here. Now. She asked what was wrong. I don't know, I replied. Please. Hurry. I stood there, keys in my hand, afraid to move. Afraid to go inside. Afraid of what I might find. And afraid of what might already be waiting for me. I stood outside my house for a long time after that call. The phone was still in my hand, my friend's voice echoing faintly as she told me to stay calm, that help was on the way. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. My body felt disconnected from my thoughts, like I was watching myself from far away. The house looked normal. Too normal. The door was locked. The windows were closed. Nothing was broken. Nothing was out of place. If someone had asked me at that moment to prove that danger existed, I wouldn't have been able to. But fear doesn't always come with evidence. Sometimes it comes with certainty. I made a decision. I couldn't stand outside forever. I couldn't keep running. If he wanted to hunt me, then hiding in the dark wouldn't save me. I needed to know. I needed to see with my own eyes. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar smell of my home wrapped around me.
Clean.
Safe. Ordinary. The living room lights were off, but the hallway light from the kitchen cast a soft glow across the floor. I locked the door behind me. The sound echoed too loudly. I stood still listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. No movement. I swallowed and forced myself forward. I checked the kitchen first. Cabinets closed. Windows locked. Nothing missing. The refrigerator hummed quietly, the most normal sound in the world. I moved slowly, room by room.
Bedroom.
Empty. Closet. Empty. Bathroom. Empty. I checked under the bed, even though I knew how ridiculous it looked. Nothing. My heart was still racing, but confusion began to mix with the fear. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe trauma really had followed me into madness. I sat on the edge of the couch and exhaled for the first time since leaving that empty street. My hands were shaking, but I was alive. I was safe. I picked up my phone and called my friend. I'm inside, I said. I checked everywhere. I think I'm okay. She sounded relieved but still cautious. Please keep the door locked, she said. We're still coming. I know, I replied. But I think I scared myself. We stayed on the phone for a few minutes, talking about nothing important. The sound of her voice helped slow my breathing. After we hung up, exhaustion hit me all at once. My body ached. My head throbbed. I felt dirty, like fear itself had soaked into my skin. I decided to take a shower. The bathroom felt safe.
Bright.
Familiar. I locked the door, turned on the water, and stepped under the spray. The warmth relaxed my tense muscles, and for a few minutes, the world faded away. I told myself it was over. I told myself I was finally free. When I turned off the water, the silence felt heavier than before. I wrapped a towel around myself and stepped out. That was when I saw him. A figure sat on my couch in the living room,
Still.
waiting. My scream died in my throat. He held a knife loosely in his hand, the metal catching the faint light from the hallway. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, as if he were a guest who had been waiting patiently. My legs froze. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might pass out. He slowly lifted his head and looked at me. "You remember me," he said. He said my name. Hearing it from his mouth shattered something inside me. "I knew you would come back," he continued calmly. "You always do what you think is right." My voice came out broken. "How did you get in?" He smiled, a smile I remembered too well. "You never changed the locks," he said. "You always trusted systems." My mind screamed run, but my body wouldn't listen. "You ruined me," he said, standing slowly. "You ruined everything I worked for." The knife glinted as he moved. "You lied," I said, my voice shaking. "You used me." "I gave you purpose," he snapped. "I gave you a future." "You were killing people," I said. His expression hardened. "And you decided to play hero." He stepped closer. "I lost my business, my power, my life," he said. "Because of you." That was when it hit me fully. It wasn't someone like him. It was him. My former boss. The man I had sent to prison. But his face. It was similar, yet wrong. The shape was off. The skin too tight in places. "What did you do to yourself?" I whispered. He laughed softly.
Surgery, he said.
"A gift you forced me to give myself." My stomach turned. "I removed parts of my face," he continued, his voice calm and proud. "Changed enough so I could walk past cameras. So I could walk past you." I backed away slowly. "You think prison scares me now?" he asked. "I've already lost everything. Killing you won't make it worse." The knife rose slightly. "I don't mind going back," he said. "Not after this." Fear burned through me, but something else rose with it. Anger. Defiance. "I won't let you do this," I said. He tilted his head. "You already did." He lunged. I screamed and stumbled backward, slipping on the tile. Pain exploded through my back as I hit the floor. The knife slashed downward, missing my chest by inches. I kicked with everything I had. He grunted as my heel connected with his leg, just enough to throw him off balance. I scrambled away, my towel slipping as I crawled, my body screaming in pain. He grabbed my ankle. I kicked again, screaming, sobbing, fighting with pure instinct. The knife came down again. This time it cut. A sharp, burning pain tore through my side. I screamed louder than I ever had in my life. Blood spread across the floor. "You should have stayed silent," he hissed. I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and smashed it into his head. It shattered, glass exploding everywhere. He stumbled, stunned for just a second. That second saved my life. I dragged myself toward the door, leaving a trail of blood behind me. My vision blurred. My hand slipped. Before I could reach it, he was on me again. The knife rose. Then,
Shouts.
a loud crash. The door burst open. I heard my name being screamed.
Police.
My friend. Chaos. He turned, distracted, rage flooding his face. The knife came down one last time. A gunshot exploded through the room. Then another. His body jerked violently. He collapsed on top of me, heavy and lifeless. I screamed until my voice disappeared. Hands pulled him off me. Someone pressed pressure against my wound. Someone else kept saying, "You're safe. You're safe." The room spun. The last thing I saw was his face, empty, still, finally powerless. Then everything went dark. I woke up to white light and silence. For a moment I thought I was dead. The ceiling above me was too bright, too clean. The air smelled sharp, like chemicals and soap. My body felt heavy, wrapped in pain and exhaustion. When I tried to move, a deep ache spread through my side and chest, forcing a weak sound from my throat. A machine beeped beside me. That was when I understood I was alive. I was in the hospital. Memories returned slowly, like broken pieces forcing their way back into my mind. The couch. The knife. His voice. The gunshots. Darkness. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. A nurse noticed and rushed to my side, speaking softly, telling me not to move, telling me I was safe. Safe. The word felt strange, unreal. I nodded, even though I didn't fully believe it yet. I stayed in that hospital for a month. 30 long days. Some days I slept almost all the time. Other days I woke up screaming, my body reacting to memories before my mind could catch up. I dreamed of him sitting in the dark. I dreamed of knives. I dreamed of doors that wouldn't open. My body healed faster than my mind. My friend visited every day. She sat beside my bed, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding my hand in silence. She looked tired, more tired than I had ever seen her, but she never complained. One afternoon, when the pain medication had faded enough for my thoughts to feel clear, I asked her the question that had been haunting me. "How did you know?" I whispered. "How did you know I was in danger?" She looked at me for a long moment before answering. "After you called and said you were safe," she said slowly, "I felt uneasy. I don't know why. Something didn't sit right with me." She swallowed. "About an hour later, I called you back. Just to check on you. You didn't answer." My heart tightened. "I called again," she continued.
And again.
No response. Then your phone went off completely. It was switched off. Tears rolled down her face. "That's when I knew," she said. "You would never do that. Never." I ran straight to the police. The image filled my mind. Her running, panicking, refusing to wait, refusing to ignore her instincts the way I once had. "They came with me," she said. "They didn't waste time." I closed my eyes. If she had waited even a few more minutes, I wouldn't be here. The authorities came later that week. They spoke gently, carefully, as if loud voices might break me. They explained what I already knew but needed to hear. My stalker, my former boss, was dead. Shot at the scene. No escape this time. No prison sentence. No return. The chase was over. There were investigations, reports, questions. They told me everything had been confirmed, his identity, his escape after surgery, his planning, his obsession. He had been watching me for months. Months. The thought made my skin crawl. Then, slowly, the noise faded. The questions stopped. The officers stopped coming. The room grew quiet again. Silence followed the chaos. That silence was almost harder. When you live in fear for so long, your body forgets how to relax. Even in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and locked doors, my mind stayed alert, waiting for footsteps that would never come. When I was finally discharged, the world felt different. Too open. Too loud. Too real. I survived. He didn't. And yet, the victory didn't feel loud or dramatic. It felt heavy. It felt like an emotional crash after months of running on pure fear. The nightmare was truly over, but the echoes stayed with me. Still, for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing with certainty. He would never come back. And that knowledge, quiet, painful, and real, was my closure. The truth came later. Long after my wounds had closed. Long after the nightmares became less frequent. Long after everyone around me believed the story had ended. It turned out he never truly served his sentence. One of the investigators told me quietly, off the record, as if saying it out loud made it more dangerous. My former boss had powerful friends, people with money, influence, and connections deep inside the system. While the world believed he was locked away, someone else had taken his place in that prison. A substitute. A sacrifice. A man who looked similar enough to pass in the shadows of paperwork and silence. My boss had walked free. That knowledge hit me harder than the knife ever did. It explained everything. The sightings, the familiar words, the confidence in his eyes, the way he moved like a man who knew no one would stop him. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't my imagination. He was proof that power can bend truth, but only for so long. Trauma doesn't disappear just because the danger ends. Even now, I still lock my doors twice. I still skin faces in crowds. I still wake up some nights with my heart racing, convinced I hear someone breathing in the dark. Survival changes you. But I also learned something else. Fear does not get the final word. For a long time, I believed running was the only way to live. I believed silence was safety. I believed surviving once meant the worst was behind me. I was wrong. Surviving once doesn't mean it's over. But standing your ground, refusing to disappear, refusing to be hunted, refusing to stay quiet, can end it. I didn't win because I was stronger than him. I won because I didn't face it alone. Because someone listened. Because someone trusted their instincts. Because help arrived when I could no longer save myself. To anyone watching this, hear me clearly. Danger doesn't always look loud. Power doesn't always look legal. And fear doesn't mean weakness. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. If someone tries to silence you, tell someone else. And if you survive something unthinkable, know this. Your voice still matters. Your life still matters. And sometimes, reclaiming your power is the only way the nightmare truly ends.